a number of serious ethical and practical issues that are stemming from climate change, which is happening. And it's not something that's beginning to take place. Something's been happening for a while and been having serious effects. One of them, of course, is the erosion of our coastal communities and coastal flooding. And this is something kind of very present to me because in the book I talk about growing up in the nice little enclave, which is New Haven, Connecticut. Maybe not everyone speaks of it in those terms, but I will speak fondly of my hometown. And climate change effects was not anything new to us. We've been having flood defenses down the road in New London, Groton, since I was a child, and a number of other problems related to climate change in the area as well. And this is big. It's not just something that affects kind of our scenery. It's of course even the devastating effect it could have on marine life and vegetation along the coastline, but also has a real effect on ways of life. The ways of life that people have of being and living in a certain area and ways of doing things. When all that must change, when the land is no longer usable and when people must go somewhere else, that has a real impact. That's one thing. There's something kind of related on a grander scale. Of course, we're seeing some countries, like Tuvalu being one of probably the most highlighted example of countries whose existential are under existential threat from climate change, that are literally sinking and disappearing before our eyes, and a range of territory of other countries that are disappearing as well. There's, I think, also another serious ethical issue about the landscape is literally changing, and not just theoretically, but practically, and affecting sovereign nation states as well. Then there's issues around food. The kind of food ethics is something I think is an area of research for people interested in philosophical questions that is beginning to take off, an enormously important area about where we get our food, how it is produced, and how it's transported, the green costs of transporting our food over long distances. And in a situation where under climate change, we're seeing areas becoming ever more arid, more problematic and growing, and the kind of more interventions needed to feed a growing human population. And then I suppose finally has been this, what I described in my work as the spread of tropical diseases to new areas, diseases that are a problem. Some locations are not just becoming a problem of a locality, they're becoming a problem of the world. And I think we've been seeing this kind of vividly in the last year or so with COVID, that problem in one area became the problem of the world. And climate change is responsible for a lot of this, a lot of these different issues in terms of how the relationship between kind of ourselves and our natural environment, and also how we interact with the natural environment, having an impact on what we eat, the diseases that might threaten us, and where we live. I mean, I think one thing that has not worked out as well has been thinking about each country making its own cost benefit analysis and then going from there. There'll be some places that will come to very different and perhaps perverse conclusions from others. So there's been some interesting work here, some controversial work here, trying to explain why places like the United States, China, Russia, might be kind of more hesitant or not as full throttled green as other countries. And the explanation that some say is that when you do a cost benefit analysis, if the planet became 2 degrees warmer, that sure, there'd be some erosion on the east coast of the United States, there'd be some other areas that would be affected. There would also be a very large area in Alaska that would then become habitable, that would become agrable. And same would go for China, for Russia as well, that there's benefits to these countries, and seeing the planet warm up, that they might think overweighs the costs. I don't accept any of that thinking. I think there is very much the need for we're all in this together, One kind of issue that persists is that you have a number of the more affluent Western countries investing in green technology, which is absolutely great, and green technology companies in their country. And one of the main objects seems to be something like developing some world excellence in this, trying to switch the local economy to being something more green, and then exporting um, this technology, this material, these ideas to other countries. Of course, I think what would be maybe even better, rather than kind of climate change and this kind of agent-patient relationship, as it were, for a global problem, that I would like to see more interaction between developing countries and the developed West, and kind of coming up with these solutions together, so that these green technologies aren't just something for a rich country to make money out of, and a way of kind of maintaining a kind of status quo of privilege, using the climate emergency as a lever to do that, but to kind of interact more with the developing world in this way. Doing that kind of activity doesn't mean that the United States or Britain or, I don't know, Sweden will somehow fall on the bottom half of growth, or various human development indices and so on. They'll still be fine in doing this kind of activity. But bringing the world together seems to be what we ought to be doing a lot more of, rather than kind of doing some things separately, and then as I say, trying to monetize it.